touched by grace, be not afraid. Darkness and light, despair and hope, confession and forgiveness. These are themes we have visited over and over again on our Lenten journey. Psalm 51, the psalm appointed for today, is considered the biblical model of confession. As you may recall, Psalm 51 is a part of the Ash Wednesday liturgy. Here is the psalm again at the end of Lent. The tradition that surrounds this psalm is that Psalm 51 is King David's prayer of confession to God after he is called out by the prophet Nathan for his perfidy, his utter betrayal. David had an affair with his neighbor's wife, Bathsheba. Then, when he learned that Bathsheba was pregnant with his child, David sent his neighbor, her husband, to his death. VeggieTale watchers, particularly our senior high youth, might know this story as King George and the Ducky. At first glance, most sin is played out in the social arena. We sin against our neighbors, as David did. But here in Psalm 51, the psalmist sees that sin is a theological problem, not just a moral, ethical, social, or psychological problem. The problem is that sin violates God. This does not mean that others are not also hurt. In this confession, the psalmist acknowledges that to even begin to reconcile this situation, the psalmist must first be in right relationship with God. King David bears the darkness of his soul to the light of God's abiding love and mercy. In a stunning display of liturgical hyperbole, as is much of the Psalms, the psalmist admits his sin, that he is utterly guilty in principle from the very beginning. Indeed, I have been wicked from my birth, a sinner from my mother's womb. Well, generations of theologians have used this verse as the grounds for the doctrine of original sin. David is merely claiming and yet fully owning that his desire for Bathsheba was wrong from the moment his mind conceived the first lustful thought. David knows no amount of confession will make Bathsheba not pregnant. He knows there is not enough sorry in the world to restore Bathsheba's husband's life. David also knows that he cannot move forward in the right way unless he allows God to blot out the darkness of his sin. Perhaps then he can see clearly and think straight. So he prays, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." Writing in the Christian century, Susan Andrews, the general presbyter for the Hudson River Valley Presbytery, noted what she feels is a disturbing trend in her presbytery. This is akin to a bishop making a statement about his or her diocese. Andrews observed that several congregations had totally eliminated the confession of sin from their worship liturgy. Too depressing, they say, too focused on guilt and shame. With progressive intensity, they offer instead a God of goodness and grace, a God of blessing, not accountability. Andrews states, "The shadow side of the progressive, prophetic Protestant church is this lack of personal accountability and the elimination of personal sinfulness and clear-eyed confession. Instead, the brokenness of the world is blamed on them, on other people, on misguided politicians, on theological traditionalists, on systems and institutions that oppress and destroy. The result is that any energy for change and redemption is often rooted in our own anger, in our own passion, instead of the merciful passion of God." Psalm 51 reminds us that there is no complete reconciliation, no true wholeness outside of our relationship to God. truth be told, religious institutions have abused the holiness of confession and beat people over the head with what they label as the sinful nature of humankind. We are wise to be wary of manipulated confessions and conditional forgiveness. But abandoning confession is like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Besides, denying human culpability and our participation in sin is not the truth. I love stories. Stories have a way of revealing truths that doctrine and religious education struggle to express. One of my favorite stories is The Tale of Despereaux by Kate DiCamillo, a Newbery Medal winner. The Tale of Despereaux is a story of darkness and light, of despair and hope, of confession and forgiveness. The Tale of Despereaux is the story of Despereaux Tilling, a very different and unconventional mouse. He is in love with light and music and with a princess named P. Because Despereaux is an unconventional mouse, he does not behave like the other mice. He did not conform. An interesting fate awaits everyone, mouse or man, who does not conform. Because Despereaux would not conform and because he loved light and music and the Princess P, Despereaux was sentenced to death by the Mouse Council. In an act of truly tragic perfidy, his own father not only participated in Despereaux's sentencing, but he also beat the ceremonial drum that accompanied Despereaux's march to the dungeon. Though this is a story of perfidy, this is also a story of grace. Through strange acts of mercy, our small hero survived his trip to the dungeon. While on his own quest of mercy to rescue his beloved Princess P, Despereaux encountered his father. His father tells him, "I was wrong. What I did was wrong. Will you forgive me, son? Please?" Despereaux looked at his father, his gray-streaked fur and trembling fingers, and his front paws clasped together in front of his heart. And he suddenly felt as if his own heart would break in two. His father looked so small, so sad. "Forgive me," his father said again. The story's narrator adds the following commentary. Forgiveness is, I think, something very much like hope and love, a powerful, wonderful thing, and a ridiculous thing, too. Isn't it ridiculous, after all, to think that a son could forgive his father for beating the drum that sent him to his death? Isn't it ridiculous to think that a mouse could forgive anyone such perfidy? But still, here are the words Despereaux Tilling spoke to his father. He said, "I forgive you, Pa." And he said these words because he sensed that it was the only way to save his own heart, to stop it from breaking in two. Despereaux spoke these words to save himself. We too have our own stories of darkness and light, of despair and hope, of confession and forgiveness. A longtime friend of mine came to visit me at church and did not come up for communion. I inquired about this later, for this was quite unlike her. She explained to me that she had not had communion in 18 months. 18 months prior, a friend of hers had committed a grave perfidy, the likes of which would win him a spot next to King David and Despereaux's father in the Sinners' Hall of Fame. My friend Miriam was unable to forgive this man. Now, to understand this story, you must know that Miriam is a lifelong Episcopalian and a lover of our Book of Common Prayer. She has spent time studying our liturgy and the theology behind the beauty of the words. She understands that the confession is strategically placed in our liturgy because people should not come to Holy Communion until they are reconciled to God and to their neighbor. Miriam explained to me, I cannot forgive this man. He does not deserve forgiveness. Therefore, I am not reconciled and cannot receive communion. I said to my friend, forgiving him does not make what he did okay. Forgiving him keeps the darkness of his sin from infecting your soul. Your withholding forgiveness does not punish him. It only hurts you. This is the truth and the mystery of forgiveness. God invites us over and over and over again to confess our sins and to receive God's merciful forgiveness. God does not do this because we deserve forgiveness. God's forgiveness does not make our sins okay. God does this to turn the darkness into light so we can see the path forward. Paths intertwining, darkness and light, all is touched by grace. Be not afraid.